Coming up on today's Locked On Senators, it's the first Battle of Ontario this season. We've got a full game day preview. We're even joined by the host of Locked On Maple Leafs.
And the rumors that Patrick Waugh was eating in a restaurant in Kanata have been debunked, but we're working hard trying to figure out where he's having breakfast this morning.
All right, all that and more. This is the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 912 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. You can follow the show on social media at Sens Central on Twitter, LockedOn.Senators on Instagram. The show is free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where a like, a comment, and a subscription go a long way. Today's comment: we want to know your key to victory to beat the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight. Today's episode is brought to you by the Sleeper app. Download the app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Today is Wednesday, November 8th, and Pilsy, forget what Patrick was having for breakfast. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had some homemade muffins. Simone made muffins, carrot walnut, I believe. They're really tasty. And two of them, not just one.
And is that good for an anxious stomach? Because I've got one of those today.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to be excited about the first Battle of Ontario. I feel like we had this one circled. Oh, okay.
This is my breakfast.
Hey, got to get the AG ones in, that's for sure. Lots of beverages. Get the fluids going.
Water and coffee. That's the breakfast of champions here on Locked On Sens. Hey, tell Simone to send over some of those carrot walnuts, though.
Sure. Yeah, they're delicious.
Ooh.
But Ross, we put out the poll, how Sens are feeling about this game. Put me in the majority category of nervous/anxious.
You're ready for this already? The results of the poll? If anybody knows this fan base, it's Ian Mendes. I'm actually surprised that it's only 46% of the citizens out there are calling themselves nervous and anxious for tonight's Battle of Ontario. Makes a little more sense when the other 30%, second most, is terrified. Terrified for tonight's game. 16% of you are optimistic, and 8% of you need to give me some of whatever you're taking right now to be confident/excited going into tonight's game.
Yeah, shout out those 8.1 percenters. Like, I want to know what they had for breakfast because they're feeling good.
No doubt. Where's the anxiety coming from? Like, what do the Sens have to do early in this game to put you at ease?
Well, I don't want to give away our keys to victory too much. A little tease for the later segments.
Our keys to confidence.
Our keys to confidence, yeah, is, look, everyone knows how lethal the Leafs power play is, but their penalty killing, not so much, only at around 71% here. So the Senators, we know, have been able to score a power play goal every game. Cool. Getting power play goals in garbage time. Love that for players, agents, and next contract deals. But as far as winning games goes, doesn't really mean a whole lot. So, Ross, even if they're not scoring on the power play, I want them to build momentum on the power play. Like, use the power play to get a morale boost and to try to wear down the opponent. So that's going to be my big thing, is in that first period, if they get penalties, if they get power plays, rather, use them to build some momentum here.
We'll have a full game day preview a little later on in the show. We want to get to the rumor that set Twitter ablaze yesterday, and the lie detector determined it was a lie. Yesterday on RDS, Norman Flynn, who I have now been told is like the least reputable journalist in I almost called it the state, in the province of Quebec, said that Patrick Waugh was seen at a Kanata restaurant yesterday. Now, Le Journal de Québec has now debunked that by saying they were able to confirm from a reliable source with supporting evidence that Patrick Roy was in Quebec City and had commitments in the old capital. So he was not in Canada.
What?
Maybe a lookalike.
What was their source? Like Patrick Roy holding up Le Journal de Quebec with the date on it, and they're like, "See, there he is." Couldn't have got that in Canada.
You couldn't have.
It's like a hostage situation or something. Jeez.
We've spoken at length about Patrick Roy, the potential fit as head coach, but Pilsy, before I found out this was debunked, I put my tinfoil hat on.
Okay.
And I said, could he be an option?
Once you took your bird dog hat off.
You don't want to see my hair right now. Could he be a candidate as Sens GM?
Whoa. And where did your tinfoil hat thinking lead you when you thought that?
To Quebec City, Chateau Frontenac.
Ah, c'est bon.
Oui, pour un petit déjeuner là. Mais what I was going with in that though, because Patrick Roy, it seemed like when he left Colorado, it was because he didn't have as much autonomy about the roster decisions that he thought he deserved to have. There was some friction there with his old Stanley Cup champion teammate, Joe Sakic. And next thing you know, he's GM and head coach of the Quebec Rempart in the QMJHL. So just throwing it out there. But again, maybe this is for nothing because he was not in Canada. However, you don't actually have to go somewhere to be in an interview. So maybe old Norman just got his facts mixed up.
Yeah, I mean, you and I know that very well, covering an Ottawa Senators hockey team living in Winnipeg and Collingwood. The location of where you are in 2023 isn't necessarily a full picture of what job you might be doing.
In my mind, I'm in the nation's capital. As
yes,
many of you are.
Yes.
I don't think we have to spend much more time on the Patrick Roy news other than to say it's been debunked. Here, I'll ask you this. Are you disappointed that it's not true?
Big time. Yeah, like I mean, Sens fans, we're looking for any sort of news to latch onto. So a guy having lunch near where our arena is, that's huge for us. Like we had a little victory there. We had a little taste of victory. And now that taste is spoiled.
I'm really nervous about the next 48 hours because we've talked and we will continue to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs coming up tonight. POSTCAST afterwards, of course. But the Vancouver Canucks are just waiting in Ottawa.
Yeah.
They're at the Parliament building. They're checking out the art gallery today. They might go for a walk in the market. They might stop by Shawarma Palace. They're having a day. And then tomorrow, they're going to bring their 9-2-1 record into the CTC. And that's going to be a tough game in and of itself. So I'm nervous for the next 48 hours. They're either going to be euphoric and the Senators are going to be 500 going into a game against the Calgary Flames, who also, by the way, just erased a 2-0 third period deficit and beat the Nashville Predators last night. But they're also still really struggling. A lot of turmoil in Calgary. The only difference is in Calgary, they can't yell fire the coach or the GM because neither of them have been there more than 10 games. So it's a 3-game series right now where it's like a 3-game segment of the schedule where we're going to learn a lot about the Ottawa Senators. I'm tired of being hyperbolic. I feel like I've got some GM PD in me right now, the Dorian, grand statements, but we're going to learn a lot about this team over the next 72 hours in these next 3 games.
And especially, Ross, I am glad this game is in Toronto. I think if this was a home game, after all the comments of Brady Tkachuk and Claude Giroux kind of addressing the way the fans have been acting at home, this would be a very tense home game up against the Leafs, especially with the way, unfortunately, we know Toronto Maple Leafs fans travel to the Sens. So I'm glad this one's on the road.
Yes, I think that's well said. And if you're a citizen in the heart of enemy territory in downtown Toronto, let us know that you're at the game. You can tweet at us at Sens Central. We want to see those boots on the ground. We want to see you guys, get into the game and mixing it up with Leaf fans over there. But you mentioned something, Billsy, that we saw right after we finished recording yesterday. So let's get a quick thought from you on Claude Giroux's comments yesterday when asked about the head coach. Bruce Garriock tweeting out the quote, It's getting pretty old, says Giroux. The fans and the media talking about DJ. It's pretty frustrating, actually. He's our coach. He's not going anywhere. We want to play for him. It's just a distraction that we don't need right now.
I mean, this is similar to Brady's comments, right? I don't really have an issue, although there's one sentence here which I have a feeling maybe Claude would want back. Saying he's our coach, he's not going anywhere. I don't know if I would say that too boldly right now. Let's just say that. Yeah.
They're just trying to be leaders in the room, and I get fans that are frustrated that it feels like they're looking outwards. And look, I'm not wanting the Toronto Maple Leafs to be the gold standard of how to talk in the media, because they certainly are far from it. But Austin Matthews, and it's different, right? Because they won the game. But the Toronto Maple Leafs were getting booed in their own building in their 4-1 when they were down 4-1 to the Tampa Bay Lightning. They end up coming back and winning that game. But Austin Matthews says, yeah, the fans were really upset, and we understand why, right? Like, it was that easy for him to just validate the fans' feelings. Now, they weren't chanting fire Keefe, although some fans do think that in Toronto. So maybe there's a bit of, difference there. But I do think that maybe the Senators could, maybe take it on the chin a little bit better rather than, put it back on the fans who have been nothing but supportive for this team through 7 years of very tough times. Now, I think I spoke for quite a few of the fans when I replied to Bruce here, as you can see from the numbers. But I mean, this kind of sums it up. Like, you know what's really getting old here? It's not talking about DJ. It's talking about November and how bad the Senators are in November. This year, 0-2-0. Last year, 4-9-1. 2 Novembers ago, 1-10-1. And maybe that one should have a bit of an asterisk. They were still rebuilding, even though the GM said the rebuild was over, but they were not serious contenders. But the last 2 years, 4-11-1 in November. Can't happen. Needs to clean it up, and it needs to be cleaned up today, tomorrow, and Saturday, Pilsy, because then we go back to the scene of the crime, Sweden, for 2 games next week.
Boy. But I'm just looking at this one game at a time, Ross. I can't even get past this game. This game is massive. It's another must-win game for the Sens, and the Sens' must-win record right now, Ross, is 1-3.
We've also got a record on the Pilsy's Parlay of the Day. We'll get to that and a full game day preview next. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. I just did a road trip to the beautiful Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm glad my car was ready to go, and eBay Motors helps with that. Passion, drive, and patience is what brings home the winning trophy and keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that W. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Check it out today, guys. ebaymotors.com.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Sleeper. Picture this. Tim Stützle with the hat trick. The Ottawa Senators make playoffs. And if you want to win 100 times your money, you can play daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. These are all possible scenarios for the season, but to have a chance at winning big, you need to play daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper. As the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network, Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. With studs like Brady Tkachuk, Claude Giroux, Jake Sanderson, and Drake Batherson, all you need to do is pick more or less on stats for these stars. So stats like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more. You heard me, Sens fans. That's 100% payout on Sleeper. So start paying attention and get your picks right so you can win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL if you're in the US for now, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. Go see Sleeper's terms of use for details. All right, Pilsy, it's a Battle of Ontario on a Wednesday night. I know. That means it's a Sportsnet game, but at least we'll get to see Kyle Bukauskas' hair. I'm sure it'll be looking just brilliant. But yes, it is a Sportsnet game tonight. Only one of a few games on the NHL schedule. There are only 3 games, so all eyes will be in Toronto for tonight's game. 7:00 puck drop. The Senators are 4-6 on the season. The Toronto Maple Leafs are 6-4-2. We'll save our Leafs discussion for the final segment where we'll be joined by Mike DiStefano from Locked On Maple Leafs. Good guy. Actually, the reason why we are Locked On Senators, as he was doing Locked On Maple Leafs beforehand. So really fun conversation getting Mikey in the mix for that. But for the Ottawa Senators, Pilsy, it has to be a stressful day for them because they know the temperature is at is the temperature at an all-time high, do you think, since we started the show? Because for me, it feels that way.
It's turned up massively, Ross, because in years past, the expectations weren't that high. Like this year is easily the highest expectations for the Ottawa Senators. And yeah, you're trying to go to Toronto and, you know, Mike even talked about it this year and the year prior. Like, at least these teams are a little bit closer in competitive rosters, and this is the first one of this season where the Senators have or should have had their most competitive roster so far. So I'm just hoping for a close, entertaining game here, because if this goes sideways on the Sens, I'm probably pressing the panic button. I know I'm very conservative with pressing the panic button, but my God, this could really change things.
The Senators did not hold a morning skate today, so we're basing this off of yesterday's lines at practice. We've got the kid line back together. Josh Norris centering Brady Tkachuk and Drake Batherson. Tim Stützle is between Mathieu Joseph and Claude Giroux. Rourke Chartier is between Dominic Kubalik and Vladimir Tarasenko. The fourth line is Roby Yarventi with Parker Kelly and Zach McEwen. On defense, Jake Sanderson with Artem Zub. We've put an asterisk there. He's going to be a game-time decision. Jacob Chychrun with Jacob Bernard-Docker. And Tyler Clevin with Travis Hamonic. Still no word on starting goalie tonight, Eunice Corpusalo or Anton Forsberg. Pilsy, your locked-on player for tonight's game.
My locked-on player is going to be Tim Stützle. Now, I know I had Tim Stützle as my locked-on player for the previous game, but Ross, I'm sticking with him, especially after DJ Smith's comments about how, hey, Timmy's just got to try to do a little less. He's squeezing the stick too tight. He's trying to do too much. And the Toronto Maple Leafs are the team that Tim Stützle has the most points up against in his career. In 17 games, he's got 14 points up against the Leafs. So, look, this is where it all started for him. He scored his first goal against the Leafs. I want him to keep things rolling and get back on track with this new line of Mathieu Joseph and Claude Giroux.
I'm glad you went with Tim Stützle because, again, he's a guy who is an X factor on this team every single night. And I'm really curious to see, now that Norris is with Tkachuk, who's going to go up against the Austin Matthew line. I think it's going to be the Norris line, but I'm going to be really interested to see. And I'm going to the Norris line for my locked-on player. I'm going with Drake Batherson. I mean, this guy's got to get going eventually, right? He's had chances, especially in first periods. And to get off to a hot start tonight, Ottawa needs to score first. They've scored first in 7 out of their 10 games, I should add, in their 10 games so far this season. But with Drake Batherson, he's not going to get a better opportunity than playing with Brady Tkachuk and with Josh Norris. So I think that you're looking at a guy who, like, it's now or never type thing. Let's go this next 3-game set. You need him to be that guy offensively and not be a complete liability without the puck. So I'm going to be really keeping my eyes on Drake Batherson tonight. The Citizens, The citizens have spoken, Pilsy. It's not even close. We always put out the poll right when we sit down before we record. Who is the locked on player to watch tonight? And after 600 votes, 21 responses, 60.5% are going with the captain. And why wouldn't they? Because Brady had some pointed comments after the last game. So how are you going to back it up? That's what fans will be watching for tonight. Brady Tkachuk's been pretty successful in his career against the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. You think of one of his first goals was against Toronto. In 21 games, he's got 18 points against the Leafs. So really looking for a big game from the captain, lead by example, and he can do that tonight.
Yep, I want to see a big game from all three of these guys, Ross. I mean, if you're gonna play up against the Leafs, everybody knows the Leafs' top guys are usually what gets them through. The Senators need to follow suit and have their top guys get them through.
All right, we still got keys to victory and a Toronto Maple Leafs preview, but first, Pilsy, we gotta get your Pilsy's parlay of the day.
Well, this is good timing, Ross, because today's episode is brought to you by the only place where Pilsy's Parlay happens, our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. They're also North America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins, if you are in the US. If you're thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time. I love the app. It's simple, safe, secure, easy to use. My favorite app for sure. Now let's get the Pilsy's parlay of the day. I took a night off, but I'm back now. The record is 3-6. I'm trying to boost the green numbers here, Ross. I put 4 legs in this one to try to get the count back to a spot where I like. So we're hitting Brady Tkachuk 3+ shots, Austin Matthews 4+ shots, the adjusted under of 8.5 goals. Joseph Woll has pretty good numbers this year, so I think the under might play here. And both teams to score in the first period. You put all those guys together in a nice, beautiful same game parlay with our friends over at FanDuel. You're going to get plus 584 odds. So $10 is going to win $58.40.
Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends with Farm to Fork, farmtoforkdelivery.ca. It's a premium meat and seafood company that serves Ontario, Quebec, and even our friends up in Nunavut. First of all, it's absolutely delicious. You can go check on Google if you don't want to take my word for it. They've got an average of 5-star reviews out of 5. All natural, antibiotic-free, hormone-free, and ethically raised. The meats are flash frozen after being hand-cut at the butcher's table, which makes for a much fresher product than grocery stores. You don't even want to know how long your meat has been sitting on the shelves at the grocery store. And what I love about them, too, is that products are individually vacuum packed, so you only have to pull out of the freezer what you need. Free delivery, convenient delivery. Save money on gas, save time, especially now that we're into the winter season. They've got all sorts of bundles that I think are the best value on their site. The Healthy Pack Seafood Bundle, for only $150, you get all sorts of great seafood from salmon to cod to halibut, everything that you need. They've also got the Holiday Steak Bundle. Get this, Pilsy, 30 steaks for under $300. All these are available at farmtoforkdelivery.ca. And because you're a listener of Locked On Senators, use our promo code Locked On, LOSP. LOSP10 is the promo code that will get you 10% off your first purchase. Taste the farm to fork difference. You will never go back to grocery store meats. All right, Pilsy, here we are, segment 3, leading you into the Battle of Ontario, and now it's time to take a peek at the opposition. And Pilsy, we know that you and I don't like talking about the Leafs, so we've enlisted somebody who does it for a day-to-day living. It's Mike DiStefano from Locked On Leafs. You know him as Al's brother from TSN 1050. We miss you, buddy, and welcome to Locked On Senators.
Thanks, bud. It's been a little bit since I've been on the show. I guess it's been a while since we've had a nice little Battle of Ontario, but it's good to ignite the battle once again.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how stoked Sens fans are for the Battle of Ontario, Mikey. This feels like this game could either be a huge morale boost or another kicking while the Sens are already down. But what's the vibe like in Leafs Nation about the Battle of Ontario?
Yeah, I mean, people are excited. Like, obviously, Ottawa, much better opponent than they have been in the last few years. I think both Sens and Leafs fans have been excited about the Battle of Ontario for the past couple of years compared to the years prior. That said, I mean, there seems to be a little bit of turmoil going on in Ottawa, obviously. The bad news train just continues to kind of pile up. So I think Toronto is just hoping to, give another one of those little bad news, knives in the back to keep it rolling here for your beloved Senators. So, but ultimately, I think people are pretty excited. Toronto's coming off, a win the other night against Tampa Bay, and hopefully they can continue to assert their dominance within the division against Ottawa as well.
Well, they were down 4-1 against Tampa Bay, and had they lost that game, it would have been 3 straight losses against division opponents, with Boston, Buffalo being the other 2 there, and they would have been winless in 5. So it hasn't necessarily been smooth sailing down the 401, but getting that momentum boost, I'm sure, will get the guys in good spirits going into tonight. The lines we're expecting for the Toronto Maple Leafs, per Mark Masters at the morning skate, you've got Matthew Nyes up on the top line with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, John Tavares with Tyler Bertuzzi and William Nylander, Max Domi between Nick Robertson and Kalle Järnkrok, and David Camp centering the 4th line with Noah Gregor and Ryan Reeves. On the back end, we're expecting to see Morgan Riley with TJ Brody, Mark Giordano with John Klingberg, and William Lagesson with Simon Benoit, and Joseph Woll starting in goal. When you see this combination, Mikey, is this something the fans are liking? What's the one thing? Fans always micro zoom in to one part of the lineup and said, it's got to be different. What is that here with the Leafs setup?
Here's the problem with that with Toronto. Like, Sheldon Keefe changes the lines constantly, where I feel like it's actually the opposite, where people want to see just a little bit of stability for once, because every single game something's changing. This actually looks to be the exact same lineup from the game against Tampa Bay, where terrible first period, like you said, down 4-1, but then really hit the ground running and played maybe their best periods of hockey in the second, and then continue with a strong follow-up period in the third. So it makes sense for him to go back to this. Last game was the first time we saw Matthew Nyes up on the top line with Matthews and Marner, and they combined for 10 points. He was terrific in that game too, like truly a driver of that line, did a lot of really good things. So, I'm excited to see them continue to potentially produce again tonight against Ottawa. Bertuzzi's a guy that's got to start. He's got to get going here. I mean, he's still, I think he's still sitting with 1 goal, and he's somebody who signed a pretty big ticket and was hoping that it could be just a 1-year, hey, go play with Matthews and Marner, put up a bunch of goals, and then cash in free agency. Man, he's been really disappointing so far this year, and he was someone who at one point this season ended up getting demoted to the 4th line. So hopefully some sort of firecracker can get shoved up his butt and he can get going at some point here. But, I mean, the real thing that most Leaf fans look when they see this lineup, they look at 2 things to answer your question. Look at Ryan Reeves, who's been in the lineup for every single game this year, which I've always said was not a winning formula. And so far, it really hasn't been. The team's been barely above 500. And John Klingberg playing in the top 4, but with injuries to Timothy Liljegren and Jake McCabe, they're kind of stuck with having to play him that high in the lineup. But he's been so terrible defensively. He's been such a liability, which is why I think tonight's going to be a gong show. Like, I think both teams, both Ottawa and Toronto, have been really leaky defensively and have gotten some subpar goaltending. And I think this is going to be an absolute gong show and a high-scoring affair tonight.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, Mikey. I was kind of surprised you thought it was going to be such a gong show with Joseph Woll in net. Are you less confident in him after that Sabres game, or do you think he can get back to his pretty consistent ways as he has been in, albeit a smaller sample size in the NHL, but still really good numbers?
No, like Joseph Woll's fine, and he's played really, really well. And it's not to say that I think he's going to have a bad night, but when you're giving up like the 7th most high danger chances in the NHL. It's not easy for a goaltender to stand on his head each and every night. And look, Ottawa, like, credit to you guys. I mean, sure, they haven't been able to string together a bunch of wins, but they're scoring a lot of goals. Like, that's a pretty potent offensive team that they've got there out in Ottawa. I think they're 4th in league scoring right now. So it's not as though this is a team that can't put the puck in the back of the net. So if Toronto's going to give up chances the way that they have been this season to a team like Ottawa, I think it's going to be a tough night for Joseph Woll. And he's either going to have to stand on his head, like he has done, to your point, in a lot of games this year, or it's going to be, a track meet. And that's kind of how I view this game.
We are going to do our lookout player, but we're going to spin it around here. We've already done our locked on player to watch for the Ottawa Senators, but who's yours on the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight?
The player to watch for tonight, let's go with Matty Nyes. I think Matthew Nyes is. I mean, if Sens fans haven't had a chance to watch this kid play yet, like, he's a special talent, or he really, really is. He's not afraid to go to the net. He's really, really good with his stick, and he's a better skater than I thought he was going to be too. He's really strong on his skates, and he's smart. Playing with Matthews and Marner, you got to make sure that you go to the right areas of the ice, and he seems to know where that is. Certainly did against Tampa Bay. So I think Matthew Nyes, like, he's a young cat who's playing Ottawa for the first time in his career, will be a good opportunity for Sens fans to keep an eye out when he's out on the ice.
I'm going to go next just because I'm taking the man right next to Matty Nyes. It has to be Austin Matthews. Every time he plays the Sens, it feels like he's good for at least 2 goals, if not more. And he's also on a heater himself, coming off a 2-goal and an assist performance, had a hat trick against the Buffalo Sabres and a goal and an assist against the Boston Bruins. So during this 3-game point streak, got 6 goals and 8 points. If we look at his career numbers against the Ottawa Senators, he's got more points against Ottawa than all but one team in the NHL. He's got 23 goals, 43 points in 29 games against Ottawa. Points per game wise, it's the most against any team. Mikey, who is the one team, trivia time, that Matthews has more points against than Ottawa?
Wow, I would have thought that it was Ottawa.
1 point, but he's played 3 more games against the other team.
Montreal?
Correct. Ding, ding, ding. Pilsy, your lookout player.
Well, guys, I guess we're just watching one line here because, unfortunately, my lookout player is arguably, Mikey, maybe you don't know this, but Locked On Senators fans know this, my most hated player in the entire league. I loathe Mitch Marner, but damn it, is he good, and does he ever make the Sens pay? Ross, you had a stat about Matthews going up against the Sens is the second most points he has up against any team. Well, unfortunately, I'm going to one-up you here. The Sens are the team that Marner has the most points up against, 36 points in 31 games against the Sens. And again, I hate to do this, but Marner is on an absolute heater right now. He's on a 7-game point streak with 13 points in those games. The last 2 games, he has 4 points in both of them. So as much as it pains me to say, I am going to be looking out for number 16.
And there he is.
Player.
There he is. Front and center on the graphic of the keys to the game for the Ottawa Senators. And then we'll get Mikey to wrap up the show with some Leafs keys to victory. But for Ottawa, they've scored a power play goal. Mikey, this might surprise you, in 7 straight games. But it's been 1 power play goal in each of the last 7. So instead of having it in garbage time, you're down 3-0, get a goal. Use the power play to gain momentum in this game. And not only that, but this team needs to get out of their zone a whole lot cleaner. DJ Smith has been very much harping on it in the media this year that they haven't been able to gain clean zone entries because they're not getting out of their zone in a constructive manner. So more clean zone exits and entries, and Pilsy, we'll let you wrap this one up with maybe the most important of the 3 keys.
Yeah, I mean, with all the injuries to Ottawa, this is not a team that's going to out-talent the Maple Leafs. They're going to have to play with a bit of an edge. Mike, I don't know if you've heard, but there's been some talk about how people don't like the Leafs' response to Brad Marchand's slew foot on Timmy Liljegren. Have you heard about that? It's been talked about a little bit.
Oh no, I haven't heard any of that noise that's been going on. Please enlighten.
No, okay. Well, I'll let you know. I've seen this in his place or two. But look, they got to try to get under the Leafs skin here. And if they're able to do that, I think that will at least give them some sort of edge here. So I'm saying the Sens got to play a physical game. You got guys like Brady Tkachuk that can do that and that are going to be matched up against the Leaf star players. Try to get under their skin like Brad Marchand does. I mean, no one does it as good as he does, but you got to try at least. We're really scraping at anything we can get here because it's been tough sledding for the Sens lately here.
And the guy who wants to do that is Parker Kelly, a guy with no penalty minutes this year, playing on the fourth line. Got to be a bit of a spark plug. I want to see him run around and make his presence felt in this game as a fourth liner.
Wouldn't mind that. I got a couple Parker Kelly rookie cards. I could use some Parker Kelly love as much as possible. Actually,
was it after he annoyed Jake? His first NHL game was against the Leafs. He scored a goal and made Jake Muzzin's night miserable. Muzzin was going out of his way to cross-check this guy every chance he got.
That's funny. I has he been around the league that long? A couple of years here?
Well, it was his first game. He was a call-up. He was an undrafted free agent too. So credit for the way he's kind of come up. It was in 2020, 2021. So yeah, the All-Canadian division. Played 7 minutes, had 1 goal and 4 hits. I'm sure 3 of them or more on Jake Muzzin.
Shout out Parker Kelly. I was actually on the Hockey News podcast the other day, yesterday, and we were opening up hockey cards. Pulled a nice little Ridley Gregg rookie canvas. Sure,
and you know what's cool about that?
Like
that's also throwback too, because he switched his number up. Yep. Now he's rocking number 71.
Oh, true. Because this picture would have been from last season.
Yeah, if Leaf fans are looking at a number 17 flying around tonight, that's Zach McEwen, who will in all likelihood get his bell rung by Ryan Reeves at some point tonight.
You think that happens? You think we see a McEwen-Revo fight? Like, I know McEwen,
he's not willing
trying to drop the mitts, but
he's willing, but is he able?
Yeah. Interesting. That'll be a nice little tilt though, because that kid can fight. He can fight. I watched a couple of his fights when he was with Vancouver. I remember him being a pretty tough dude.
He does fight. Can he fight? Remains to be seen. He lost a fight to Austin Watson. I mean, Sens fans, like that was an ultimate down bad moment for Sens fans.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's another tough dude right there as well.
What's your key to victory for the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight, Mikey?
So, I think that they need to take advantage of like this weak Sens blue line for me. Like, you look at Ottawa and they're giving up the 3rd most high danger scoring chances per game this season. And Toronto's done a really good job so far this season of getting to those areas. You've got Austin Matthews and John Tavares both leading the NHL in high danger shots. So they get into the middle of the ice and get those chances. So hopefully they can convert on those opportunities. But I think another thing that they definitely are going to have to do is, and to your point, you talked about how the Senators need to work on their breakouts and their zone entries. And I think Toronto needs to make sure that they don't allow that. They got to stay on top of pucks, clog up the neutral zone, have really active sticks, and try and force as many turnovers as possible for some quick transition offense. I think that's going to be another key tonight. So those are a couple of keys that I have for the Maple Leafs.
And just to compare the two teams, and this is actually an even stronger example because the Leafs were down 4-1 against Tampa, and then they mounted a comeback. But you expect in those situations that you would shorten the bench. But still, Toronto, with their injuries on the back end, they've got this Simon Benoit guy who's coming up from the minors, right? They've got William Lagesson, who's not necessarily an everyday NHLer just yet. Both of those guys over 14 and a half minutes in that game.
Yeah.
Mikey, Leaf fans should be watching for the Senators decor right now. I went on a huge rant about this. Ottawa's 3rd pair, and since Zub is in all likelihood coming back in tonight's game, it might be a little bit cleaner. But the bottom pair was Tyler Clevin with Nicholas Matinpalo. And in a game on a Saturday night, you need some energy. They played 6 and 7 minutes in the game. So basically, DJ was running with 4 defensemen for an entire game. So if you're watching tonight's game, see how the Senators are utilizing their defensive core, if they're using all 6 or if they're going to run their top 4 into the ground.
Interesting. Well, the Leafs, when it comes to depth scoring, it's been very bleak. So they may be able to get away with playing the 3rd pair a little more. So hopefully that doesn't happen. tonight again. And, you see a little bit more spread out minutes with the non-threatening depth scoring in Toronto.
For more on tonight's game from the Leafs perspective, Locked On Maple Leafs is out wherever you get your podcasts, also available on YouTube. Mikey, enjoy the game tonight, brother. Appreciate you jumping on.
Thanks, man. You guys too, and all y'all over at Sens Nation. Enjoy the loss tonight.
All right, Pilsy. Final thoughts on today's show, brother.
Final thoughts for me is this game is huge. I mean, especially with the back-to-back playing the Canucks tomorrow, you're going up against your most heated rival in the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then one of the hottest teams in the NHL in the Vancouver Canucks. They've got to get a win here to get some momentum going into this back-to-back. Like, it's the first back-to-back of the season. This team's down bad. I'm just hoping and praying, Ross, that Artem Zub does indeed play this game. I don't want to see another Artem Zubless lineup here.
A Zubless lineup is a recipe for disaster in tonight's game. Hopefully the Senators, though, come out early and look connected when they're leaving the zone. That'll be my first key to, like, okay, things are actually going to progress here a little bit. You can find us in the postcast after tonight's game. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube to get the notification when we go live. Should be about 10 to 15 minutes after the final buzzer. Remember, we vibe or we vent on the postcast. So whether it's a 7-1 loss or a 10-1 win, we'll be there to take you through each and every thought process throughout the entire game. For today, though, we say goodbye. Try not to get too stressed, Sens fans. We only got a few more hours before the first Battle of Ontario and the first of 3 games in 4 nights, all against Canadian opponents. Enjoy the day. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.